Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 5 series of top level StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a Terran versus Protoss that is supposedly amazing, played just a couple of days ago on the new multiplayer balance patch, and of course also on the brand new maps. So spawning right here in the top right hand corner of a map called Ultra Love, playing with the Red Terran SCVs, you know him, you love him. We have a previous world champion of StarCraft 2 from South Korea. We have none other than ByuN. His opponent down in the bottom left, playing with the blue Protoss probes. The #1 player from the United States of America. We're looking at Astrea's main Nexus. Alrighty, let's find out. This series supposedly has some of the very best games played on the new multiplayer balance patch just yet. So I'm excited to find out exactly what ended up happening between these two. So far though, everything is very nothing all too crazy. A barracks up on the high ground right now for ByuN. We have a gateway inside of the main base here as well. Most notable change, I guess, for the early game of this particular matchup is that the Stalker, in the updated version of the multiplayer balance patch, is now 10% faster to build. So 27 seconds rather than 30. Doesn't sound like a big difference, but it really does help against some of those early game cheeses. One of the reasons as to why Protoss got this as a buff is that apparently there were some builds going around on the ladder on the PTR where Terran was building a bunch of barracks right over here. They would make a couple of tech labs, make a couple of marauders, and would just march into the natural expansion at some point. We've seen that build time and time again, and in the previous patch, well, the savior for that particular strat would oftentimes be the shield battery overcharge. It's still certainly a build order that can work with Terran's early game, right? If they manage to hide it successfully. But now with the Stalkers building ever so slightly quicker, it does mean that it's all gonna be just a bit easier to hold. Now, I've seen a little bit of confusion on the internet. The warp gate time for a Stalker is identical to what it always has been. So it's really only an early game buff. As soon as the warp gate is done, yeah, you're not gonna really use a regular gateway anymore, which honestly I think is always a bit of a shame. I always like the idea of having the option of using a warp gate again in the game too, but that's never really been a thing. Once you can start warping in gateway units, well, you usually never switch it back. So that time is identical. It's really just the first 2, maybe 3 Stalkers, if you're really rushing them out, that are gonna be produced a few seconds quicker. Starport coming up right now here for ByuN. He is building 2 Reapers. We're also going to go into a Hellion. So he will be running those across the map here in a moment. But so far, both players playing this, yeah, very trustingly, right? They're not really sitting back. They're not really like worried about the opponent attacking them, apparently. We're not sending in any scouting workers. We're going to wait until the opponent comes to us. Now, this is a map, Ultra Love, that has a nice little ramp that goes down from the high ground to the rest of the map. And this is like a little welcoming committee right now for that Hellion. Yeah, he's not gonna live very long. Welcome to their base. In the meantime, though, the Reapers being a little bit annoying. The Hellion was treated roughly. 5 probes is honestly really good. Oh, he even gets one of them out. 5 probes is really good for just 1 Reaper and then also 1 Hellion. Distraction squad successful. Obviously, by no means game-ending damage, but it is something that can very quickly pile on, right? As the game progresses. It is very important that everything after this is at least a bit cleaner, because if you take a bit of damage first, and then a little bit more damage with the follow-up attack, which is going to be 2 Widow Mines and what seems to be 4 Marines, it can become a little bit tricky. Third Nexus, though, is building. Astrea has not been slowed down in that department. He did go for the shield battery over here on the high ground too. Now we have a robo facility on the back of this, and it is of course that blink opener here for Protoss. We're only on 2 gateways though, so that makes up for some of those worker losses. Careful now. Okay. We almost had a ladder hero moment right there, where Astrea decided to sacrifice all the probes by clumping them together. Hey, look, that's another usage, I guess, of that energy buff on the Nexus, using the hallucinated Phoenix to soak the damage of the Widow Mine. Clever little use right there from Astrea. Rather than sacrificing another probe or any other unit, we can just sacrifice the hallucination instead. Okay. Reaper. revenge at last. It looks like this medevac, even though it has to be a little bit sneaky, because it's being chased by a couple of Blink Stalkers, it is going to be able to make its way all the way back home. So nice little bit of poking here early on. Little bit of damage dealt, but ultimately by no means the end of the world. And that means we're going to continue playing the macro game. Generally speaking, Protoss takes a third Nexus off of, well, usually 3 gateways. 2 gateways means that Protoss is being a little bit greedy. This is still relatively common if you know you can get away with it. It is usually fine, but Astrea hasn't really seen too much. All he saw was a Hellion opener, and I guess that was enough for him to say, okay, I don't really have to worry all too much about a big follow-up attack. And obviously this is also a map that is relatively easy to defend on. We've seen on some engagements, especially on this like ramp over here where Protoss can find a pretty good spot. There are a lot of different entrances into this third base. We'll have to see what ByuN decides to do here in just a moment, but knocking down rocks does take a while. Robo Bay at this point is done. We should definitely see a Colossus. Hello. Oh, he chronoed it, but he didn't actually start it up. Okay, he just checked it, but that was a little bit of a misplay. Probably tried to start up the Colossus and didn't quite have the money for it and automatically started up the Chrono Boost, but didn't quite start up the Colossus itself. This is a critical unit to have out. When you're going 2 gateway, you basically have no stuff. There's 1 Immortal available too, though, which is quite good. Another shield battery on the high ground over at the third. In the meantime, we do have, okay, that structure or that unit getting shot out of the sky as well. Probes are forced to be pulled away. Colossus is ticking. It will be coming out eventually. Immortal, not so immortal now. But Astrea once more is going to be able to stabilize. But you can tell there are a lot of probes here going down. Those traits are by no means free, though, for the Terran player. Now apparently it is up to Astrea to try and see if it can maybe go across the map. Third command center is very late with an opener like this. So even though ByuN's worker count right now is looking pretty good compared to that of the Protoss, obviously with mules mining, his income is going to go through the roof. But it's not like there's really that much follow-up here. I don't think Astrea is going to be too aggressive. A blink into the main base would be a blunder. But he knows that. He's mostly just trying to be a bit of a jerk. Showing his opponent that he's got a big Colossus. Don't want to be taking any chances here. 3 medevacs, though, going across. Double upgrades coming up inside of the Forge in the meantime. So Astrea is reading this game really nicely. Sending a probe around the map as well to build a bunch of pylons and just to get vision. So if you look at the minimap right now, there's just lots of spots where Terran can be seen. And Astrea is going to get the heads up of this exact medevac drop as well. Keep in mind that this is ByuN. So, yeah, he's got medevacs. Obviously, he has to send them across. That is just what ByuN does, oftentimes to his own, detriment, where he's getting a little bit too eager. Careful now, ByuN. There are so many games where I've seen the man be very far ahead and then decide to just boost in a bunch of medevacs for no apparent reason and throw it all away. As the third command center, though, is finally flying down to the low ground, as we do have a Ghost Academy coming up right now as well, there's already a 4th Nexus, about halfway done on the other side of the map. So despite all of that damage that ByuN has dealt here in the early game, it doesn't seem like Astrea is all too bothered. He's adding on additional gateways right now. We are going up to the number 11. Are we okay with 11 gateways? Yeah, even numbers preferably. Prime numbers also acceptable. Ghosts are coming up. And it looks like ByuN is marching around this map in a very large ball, whereas Astrea is playing the map a little bit more. I feel like ByuN is just sort of running around and trying to find an opportunity, whereas Astrea already has a very good understanding of where what needs to go, and at what point Terran can potentially be scary. I'm really liking this army movement here, from the American Protoss in particular. There's +2/+2. Very smooth. Yeah. Alright, well there's the ghosts. Keep in mind that ghosts are now 3 supply rather than 2. I know I repeat this every single time there's a ghost in any of my videos, but maybe it's not a bad thing, right? Sometimes I wonder if I'm being a little bit too repetitive over all of the changes. But then I realized that, yeah, not everybody watches everything. I know, it's crazy. Not everybody watches all of the stuff. So probably not a bad thing to repeat it. Nicely done, good snipe. There's another observer over here too. Keep in mind that the ghost can decloak that as well, but he doesn't see it. There's a little blur. Yeah, you can kind of see it if I move the camera a bit. Disruptors coming up. Keep in mind that disruptors in the new patch, they have a larger radius on their purification nova, so it's a 1.5, meaning that they also get some additional range. Because, well, there's more radius. A lot more surface area. But it also now deals less damage across the board. For this particular matchup, it still one-shots Marines, it still one-shots Ghosts, but it no longer one-shots the Marauder. Storm coming up because of that as well for Astrea. He needs another source of splash damage. This is a really nice little fight over here. No, he decides to target the Disruptor. Nova did not go off. Vikings up in the air decide to target fire down that Colossus. I didn't think ByuN was going to commit to this fight, but he decided to double down, and that is working out a hell of a lot better than I thought. Then again, at this point, it's Stalkers remaining, but there's a lot of them. Astrea needs to be a little bit careful. We've got a lot of money in the bank. Definitely not a bad moment to maybe go ahead and warp in another round of, like, Zealots, for example. Another Nova will be denied. Lovely control here by ByuN. Okay. Big round of Stalkers. It is tempting right now to blink after this army. Yeah. He dodges the first EMP because of it, but not the second one. It looks like the fight over the bridge has not yet been decided. These tiny bridges in the middle of Ultra Love. Always a lot of action here. Do you think this vortex has anything to do with it? We've been trying to take pictures of black holes. I think there's like 2 of them in real life now, aren't there? Anyways, just take a screenshot. It's much easier. ByuN finding himself at a nice little supply advantage, but that's not all too surprising. Main problem here that Protoss tends to run into, and the main advantage that Terran has, is that a lot of the Protoss units take about 3 years to produce. Whereas the Marines, the Marauders, the Ghosts, the Mines, the Medevacs, all of them produce pretty quick. You can tell here that pretty much all the Robo Bay units, though, are gone. Now, there are some Stormy Boys here. Astrea has teched up very nicely. ByuN has successfully covered the bridge now, but he's taken a left turn after going across the bridge. Down towards the low ground. Storm! Very good. This is Astrea shouting, "Get off my lawn." Nice little bit of micro. Does take a bit of damage. We also did have 6 SCVs going down. Where did the SCVs die? Where are we killing SCVs? Am I blind right now? Ah! What? There's no blue dot on the minimap? Am I crazy? It's this one Zealot over here that somehow magically gets a lot of kills? Wait, when it got surrounded by all of those SCVs, I feel like the blue dot on the minimap disappeared. Maybe I'm just blind? Oh, it's really hard to see. Can you see that? Huh. Red is definitely the better color. At least for visibility. If you want to win, maybe be blue. For the pro gamers, by the way, colors generally are standardized. You can set default colors in the game. A lot of players will obviously choose colors that have the highest contrast. There's also a little bit of personal preference. I know there's a lot of pro gamers actually that play with pink. They just have the pink units. It's what they like to do. Jimmy has found a base in the bottom right. It's just a single pylon, but he doesn't trust it. In the meantime, though, there's a big fight opening over here. Another choke point. ByuN always going through these choke points. He needs to be very careful, though. There's a lot of splash damage here in this Protoss army. The Marines and Marauders are all running dangerously low on HP. Medevacs don't have a lot of energy anymore. I think it's about time we go back home. 2-2, though, just finished here for the Terran player, so he figured he needs to go ahead and give it a shot. Okay. A nice back and forth so far. No one really with a significant advantage. 3-3 coming up here for both players. Despite the fact that they're playing an entirely different race, those units are still coming up at a reasonable time. Now keep in mind that usually at this stage in the game, Terrans will continue improving their unit composition in the form of Liberators. We don't really see that transition just yet here for ByuN. Maybe he's not gonna go for it. But I don't know if this is the type of game where Astrea will be too keen to go into any Tempests. Tempest transitions can be extremely good, but they're also costly and quite difficult to pull off. Adding an extra starport into the mix, going into a fusion core, always seems a little bit more manageable. Both players, though, have a tremendous economy. Astrea right now going for the base in the far top left. Viking count is growing, and once those Vikings are out... Yeah, I mean, we're rebuilding it after killing all those Colossi previously. He needs some more again, but... When the Vikings are out, we can destroy all of the Colossi, at which point Liberators become a really good choice. Big storm, though. That bridge, man. Ay, ay, ay. This bridge is actually... Like, these two bridges over here have been massive. Neither of them really want to create any space here. This is one of those situations, and maybe one of the very first situations on the new patch, where we can actually witness the decrease of the ghost strength. So, ByuN is maxed out. It now means that his maxed out army is going to be 8 supply bigger than it ever was, soon to be 12, because he's going up to 12 ghosts. That's actually quite significant. Like, that's basically 12 less Marines in this army composition. It's by no means the end of the world, but it does mean that the Ghost is a little bit less massable. There's the third starport coming up. We definitely do have a Stargate over here too, together with a +1 arrow weapons. So both players are slowly starting to make a transition towards that late game flying army. Big stim, massive stim right now. Good EMPs there as well from ByuN, but he walks into a storm. Ultra Love has a ton of choke points. Trying to see if he can create a bit of a surround, though. The Protoss army at this point is split up. I honestly don't hate this fight, though, for Astrea. Even though, yeah, ByuN thought he had a haha, gotcha now moment. He actually found himself in a pretty nice position there, Astrea. Lots of splash damage, correct amount of splits. And even though the base in the top right, or in the top left rather, had to be the knight, there is another one going up over here in the bottom right-hand corner. Fleet Beacon. Second Stargate. We don't have a fusion core yet for ByuN. I mean, the Mothership is good, especially in Protoss versus Zerg. It is not really that amazing of a unit, though, in Protoss versus Terran. I'm really liking it in PvZ. But in PvT, not that much has changed. It's mostly because Terrans will always be forced to make Vikings against Colossi. Against Prisms, that sort of thing. And obviously, they're still going to be pretty darn good as well. Ooh. Against a Mothership. So I don't really think Astrea is thinking about that direction. I mean, these choke points are absolutely painful for ByuN. Astrea is constantly inviting his opponent to fight into a choke, which means that all of his splash damage units just deal more damage, and that's about half of his army right now. Archons deal splash damage, Templar deal splash damage, Colossi deal splash damage, Disruptors deal splash damage. The man's got every form of Protoss splash damage right now. He's trying to get this Terran army to be as clumped as possible. Oh, finally a Nova that actually gets something done. ByuN is on the prowl right now, though. Another Nova coming in clutch from the right. Forces that army away. An interesting blink right over there, trying to create a concave. Again, big choke point here for ByuN. So it means that, yeah, the convex is never really the way to fight. We have another Nova coming in clutch. Turns out the Vikings actually also no longer die in one hit. Tempest coming up. That was a great engagement for Astrea, though. Really good. We have a Dark Shrine building as well at home right now, so Astrea has decided that this is his opportunity to make a transition towards a proper late-game army. Liberators are coming up. At this point, they're also more or less a necessity. Because this Terran army, yeah, is going to have a really hard time keeping this Protoss pinned back. There's the Libs, though. And while Stalkers can sort of catch up with it, it's not a great choice. Another Storm. I'm really liking what Astrea is doing here across the board. Excellent gameplay. He seems to have been playing the new patch quite a bit. I mean, we all know that ByuN plays a gajillion games a day. But Astrea is certainly capable of going toe-to-toe here, which is awesome to see. There's the advanced ballistics coming up. Tectonic destabilizers. So those are upgrades for those, well, Liberators and for those Tempests. We even have the Shadow Stride research. That's the Dark Templar Blink ability coming up. There's a good chance that Astrea is going to replace any Zealot run-bys. Oh, big engagement once more with Dark Templar instead. Don't get too over-eager, though, here, Astrea, because a lot of the supply count is still on that production tab. There's a bunch of units that also are not quite joining in. This is that weird moment where both players are trying to take one of the same base. It's blocked. Oh. Unacceptable landing zone. Much less exciting. All right. Advanced Ballistics is finishing up, but the Tempests are already picking away at those Libs one at a time. Okay. Excellent. Really nicely done here by Astrea. Like, he had some issues against that very first group of Reapers at about minute 4. But I feel like that's also been the biggest mistake that he made in this game. Careful, though. Yeah, one of those Tempests is going to be super dead. Nice targeting there by ByuN. But still, this is Astrea fishing right now for a nice engagement. It's not a lot of Tempests, but it's just enough to be annoying. And furthermore, this is also forcing more Vikings, and when more Vikings are being made, it obviously means that Terran doesn't have a whole lot of Liberators. Now, the Viking count, though, is looking pretty good. Good Storm. Colossus did take a lot of core damage. Okay. +3 air weapons coming up. ByuN is flying his command center to the corner of the map. It's something he learned back in Silver League. I'm assuming that needs to go somewhere else. But anyways. Very common strategy when you don't want to leave the game. You just fly your command center to the corner instead. There's always the opportunity to go in for a counterattack. Oh, Astrea is considering going up towards the natural expansion. I don't think I love that. Very risky. Okay, you let the Zealots in, but that's it. That is not a bad idea. You know what? At this point, he knows that this expansion over here is not taken, because there's an invisible man. He's killing the Ghost Academy. Astrea has all the important bases taken. And while ByuN is still maxed out, his bank is nothing to write home about. Astrea has taken the very capitalistic approach. Yeah. He's pwning the Libs as well. No. Too soon, we can't. Okay, Mothership is coming up. We have the Stargates producing Tempests. Trying his very best to keep this Terran player as occupied as possible, right? So there's only a handful of bases and they're all running out. Look at this, 15 SCVs on a couple of mineral fields, 19 right over here. That means that ByuN essentially needs to win with this army that he's got here right now. Now, it's very doable. The only problem is that Astrea has a lot of production. I wouldn't even mind seeing like an additional 10 gateways here. Maybe a little much, but he can very quickly remax, and I feel like that's one of the only ways in which this game can go south. Take a really bad engagement, take too long to remax. Terran, in the meantime, takes a planetary fortress somewhere, or you get the entire Terran army in your mineral line. Technically, you shouldn't need it. Technically, you don't need 25 gateways, but in a situation like this, I don't hate it. This is essentially the last little bit of army. Like, never count ByuN out, though. Like, ByuN is known to work magic with his army units. He's maxed out. He's got an awful lot of it. And it's a really strong army, too. There's the Mothership coming in. Time Warp is a super good ability. Yeah, this map has tons of choke points. So Time Warp, by the way, this big bubble, it reduces movement speed by 50%, but also attack speed by 50%. That second part is something that most StarCraft players learn the hard way. Where you one day lose a game that you had won because you think you can fight inside of the Time Warp. Basically, it's a giant don't fight here bubble. We're gonna rub a little bit of salt in the wound as well. Astrea's like, yo, bro, have some of my probes. Remember those guys you've been trying to kill all day? I don't need them anymore. He's getting rid of them, which opens up some more army supply. He was replacing any of those lost... Yeah, he's just gonna go mass photon cannon. So this is Astrea playing this as safely as possible. Not taking any chances. He knows that this is essentially the only mining here that ByuN gets. Still though, it's a big army. Astrea needs to remax. Okay. You can't fight here, ByuN. It's not gonna happen, dude. This is like, what, 20 photon cannons over here. I want to see you fight it, but I don't think it's ever gonna go well. Keep in mind, by the way, that this is game number 1 of a best of 5 series. I hope you got yourself a drink, because this is looking like it's gonna be a while. We are coming up on the conclusion, though, of the first game of the series. And I think it's going in favor here of Astrea, but this is ByuN's final shot. It's just that he doesn't quite have the units here. I mean, I say that, but every time I glance down at the bottom of the screen, the man is still maxed out. He's got a good bit of income again now, too, with this newly acquired base. It's just that he doesn't have the bank. You can see that Astrea is struggling actually closing it out. The way that ByuN is posturing his army makes it look like he's got, well, a lot more than he actually does. Astrea is saying, yo, if you want to play this, it works out for me. I will just go ahead and hang out in the corners of the map, and I will eventually max out. Right? Like, we will just... Well, I'll max out, but I'm not really in a rush. I know that I can eventually just win this game pretty much 100% of the time. Unless you take a disaster of an engagement. Yeah. Astrea just making sure that he doesn't make any mistakes. That's his main goal. He's getting all the upgrades. He's shopping right now. Look at that. We're going gravitic drive. Has there even been a prism in this game? That's the prism speed upgrade. Have we even seen a warp prism? I don't remember seeing a prism. Pew. Okay. Vikings trying to hunt all of this down. Yeah, no. This is ByuN's final stand. And while he is doing a good job fighting against this particular Protoss army, Astrea is going to be able to easily remax. Whereas ByuN just doesn't have that luxury. I mean, I say that, again, he's producing an awful lot of units. This base is mining out really rapidly, though, because he's constantly dropping mules. I wouldn't have minded seeing a couple units maybe run on over here, man. We can definitely afford, like, I don't know, a round of zealots just to run down to the low ground. I understand that the libs are going to kill it, but we can do a couple of Dark Templar. But Astrea is saying, yo, I am mining 2 full bases that you're never gonna have. So I, by default, am mining like 65% of the map or so. So if that's the case, how are you ever gonna win? The only problem here is that you're also playing a series. And this is killer for your gamer stamina, you know? These are very intense games to play. Oh, big storm. Oh, big storm. Yeah, it's a juicy one. Oh, I saw that one too. He couldn't take the bait. He knew he probably should have backed up because there was a good chance he was going to get EMP'd, but sometimes you got to go for the endorphin storm, you know? A little bit of an explosive ending to this game. Yeah, so basically Astrea is slowly suffocating his opponent. He's like, psst, ByuN. ByuN, just step out, buddy. Shh. Shh. No more tears, ByuN. No more. Shh. Just give up, man. Just. Shh. This has essentially been an unlosable game for Astrea for the last 5 minutes. But he is not taking any chances. One nuke. If ByuN wins this because of one nuke, I'm gonna lose my mind. I mean, I don't hate it. It's a great idea. If you literally have one shot, one opportunity, it would be with a tactical nuke. It has happened before. To Solar. And then also to Solar. And then again to Solar. But not usually to Protoss. Some nice zoning storms over here too. ByuN is still getting an awful lot of value, guys. If ByuN wins this game... Nah, it's not possible. We have another storm coming in from the high ground. Large group of zealots, though. Astrea not really having the best of engagements here. Or maybe I should be complimenting the way that ByuN is playing this out. There comes the Sky Toss. Mothership way overextended, but not a lot of anti-air in this Terran army anymore. I think we should have made more gateways. The 14. Oh, one of the ghosts there got crushed with that tower being knocked down. Yeah, no, I think a couple. Oh, we're now gonna do a late game cannon rush. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, sure. We're gonna do a 30-minute cannon, quote unquote, rush. Much like the flying command center in the corner of the map. We do have a lot of Silver League inspirations here. More probes are being sent across. Dude, the amount of value that Astrea, or sorry, that ByuN is getting out of this late game, though, is absurd. I don't think you're gonna win that fight, ByuN, but ultimately, my god, he made Astrea fight for it. Ultimately, it's the Protoss player who wins game number 1. Game number 2, we find ourselves on Whispers of Gold. Honestly, brilliant game 1. Really good. Very safe by Astrea. But that was the gameplay of a man who's accidentally lost many 1 games. Right? There's always people out there that think it's almost like BM to play the late game that slowly, right? To like assume that a player is trying to be bad-mannered. But the thing is, it is very easy to lose a game of StarCraft. If you've played a bunch of games of StarCraft, you know how easy it is to accidentally lose a match, even when you're very far ahead. And keep in mind, we have the perfect information, right? Like, we look at the game and we're like, oh, ByuN has no money in the bank. Astrea has, like, 10,000 resources. Astrea has a feeling, as far as that goes. That's something that happens when you play a lot of games. You can kind of understand how much money your opponent likely has. But if you looked at the way that ByuN was maneuvering his army around the map, it looked like his bank was a hell of a lot bigger than it actually was. The way that ByuN was actually microing all of that and the way that he was posturing his army made it look like he had a ton of stuff. So, clever play right there by ByuN. Making himself look a lot bigger than what his army actually was like. And I think because of that, Astrea was like, you know what, we're not taking any chances. I have those corner bases, and when you have more than half the map, when you have half your side of the map and then plus 1 base, you can't really lose the game unless you really have terrible trades. Obviously, he invested a lot as well into like base defenses and stuff. We saw like, what, 20 photon cannons in the corners, right? Like there were a lot of resources, I guess, wasted that wouldn't be used on armies, but at least you could secure those expansions. So it's, yeah, it's a lot easier, I guess, for us to look at that game and be like, oh, well, just go and finish it. Just finish it, bro. It's easy. But when you're actually playing the game, it's very, very hectic. Plus, it is a perfectly valid way to play. Right? When you're ahead, get more ahead is the oldest advice in StarCraft 2. But it's also some of the very best. Reaper Scout going in. Neither player really dealing with all too many early game units across the map. ByuN is, yeah, trying to see what's happening. He sees that it's a Stalker first, but that doesn't really give you all too much. it's gonna be a Stargate opener. Okay. So this is something that we haven't... Honestly, I feel like Stargate builds in general in PvT have really lost a lot of popularity over the last half year or so. And this is something that is specifically being addressed with this new patch. It's not suddenly going to make Phoenix builds a lot more common, but it is going to be a little bit easier. Couple of reasons as to why. So first off, once more, it's that Stalker build time, I guess. The Stalker build time just makes it a bit easier to stay safe. Problem you run into with Stargate builds is that it's just hard to really not die, right? It's really easy. Nice scout here by ByuN. It's really easy to lose the game when you're playing a Stargate build first. Especially in the previous version of the game, so I guess the quote-unquote current version, because this is on the PTR. It's not technically the finalized version yet, but I don't think this is going to be changed. In the previous version of StarCraft 2, players could make cyclones, right? And you can make a cyclone without having a tech lab. Now, there's been a lot of changes to the cyclone over the years. ByuN is still going to go ahead and make it, but this is much more of a commitment, because now he had to make the tech lab over here. It means that there's not going to be any, like, benchies, for example, and he had to actually spend that time and also the resources on it. It makes the Stargate builds a lot more viable, because the problem that you can very easily run into is that, well, just a push with a bunch of Marines and, like, a cyclone or two can end a Stargate build. Now, as far as to when the new patch is gonna go live, we don't really know yet. Oh, nicely done. This is the oldest defense in the book, man. There's a Widow Mine hiding behind that gas geyser. And honestly, that's really bad. This can pretty much be Nah, okay, that's a little early. But if this was a home story cup and the pro gamers were commentating, they would call this as pretty much GG at this point. Losing an Oracle like that is a tremendous loss. Astrea is following this up right now with Phoenixes. The idea is that you can usually transition from Phoenixes into Colossi, but going into Colossi right now is going to be a hell of a lot harder. So apparently we're going to go into a Twilight Council with Blink here instead. And it's really just been one Oracle and one Phoenix, and that's it. So let's see how this goes right now here for Astrea. ByuN is cruising along right now. At Home Story Cup, in case you're unfamiliar, this is a tournament that's been running since the early days of StarCraft 2. Usually there's 2 tournaments a year, a summer and then a winter edition. Usually the pro gamers also join the casting couch, and they join for some commentary. And it is funny to watch pro gamers cast games, because they have a very different point of view. One theme is that they pretty much always call GG at about minute 3. They're very quick to call GG. It's like, ah, no, this game is unwinnable now. We can't play it out. I mean, they'll stay in the game because they're playing a tournament, but the game is basically unwinnable. No way we're gonna blink in. Okay. Defensive blinks. I like that. They're very quick to call GG. And back in the day when we didn't have a dedicated observer, a lot of the times either the commentators would be observing the games or the pro gamers. And I will give you a little insight in how pro gamers observe pro games. I remember very distinctly we had a stay-at-home story cup during COVID a couple years ago, and this is how Raynor was casting games with me. At some point I had to take the mouse out of his hands, because this is... it's horrible. There's a lot of this sort of movement going all over the screen. Pro gaming observing is something truly glorious. They just click the left mouse button on the map and just go from there. They do a lot of this as well. They APM spam in replays. So there's a lot of this going on in the top left-hand corner, where they're treating the replay like an actual video game that they're playing at the same... There's a lot of APM spam in every single game. This is if you watch any pro gamer stream ever, when they open up the game after the match ends, they will oftentimes be spamming in the replay, just because it's a force of habit. Keep the hands moving at all times. Now, this is gonna be a really tricky move out, though, for Astrea to hold. Problem you run into, like, right, when you lose that Oracle, everything's so slow. Now, we have had a follow-up here with Psionic Storm. So this is charge slots, good EMP. Or EMP. Good feedback. But we have charge slots, we have storms. This is one of the very best armies to be holding these type of attacks with. It can be difficult to transition into, but Astrea has cut a couple corners. Sorry about that, Mr. Zachary the Zealot. He's cut a couple corners to try and get this unit composition to go ASAP, and he's doing everything to try and get back into this. Fourth Nexus is also really quick. All of this is going well for Astrea, but I think this base is gonna get cancelled. Well, maybe not. ByuN actually doesn't believe he's got the firepower, but he doesn't know where that army is. He's gonna give it a shot, but now the reinforcing zealots come in. Okay. I do love listening to pro gamers cast games, though. There's a lot of really valuable insight. There's a lot of stuff they take for granted. Like little basic bits of knowledge that me, as somebody who's been watching, like I've seen thousands upon thousands of games of StarCraft, right? I've been casting this game a long time. Sometimes they give little bits of information that I've never really considered before. I'm like, huh, that's a really good point. I never really thought about that. One thing I've also noticed, though, with pro gaming commentary is that oftentimes there's this, like, intuition. Some pro gamers are really good at, like, explaining and vocalizing some of their decision-making, as we do have a nice little attempt here at a comeback by Astrea. I'm actually really liking this here from his perspective. Yeah, gets a bunch of SCVs, gets a siege tank over here, maybe another. Boom. The Zealots are gonna get sacked here in the end, but the fight on the left was also won. That Phoenix from the early game patrolling. Matter of fact, drop in the top right, though. It's those guys from earlier trying to be a nuisance. No way that they're going to be able to kill the base. Zealot warp inside of the main, too. There's a lot of Widow Mines hiding behind, in that same spot, behind that refinery where that first one was. It was probably just him and his brothers. Good cleanup right here by ByuN, but ultimately, this is not as good a position here for the Terran player as it could have been. So, yeah. Great control right here, and honestly, really solid transitions by Astrea. He understands the situation that he's in, and he decided to cut a couple corners, and that allowed him to get back into this spot. So what I was trying to explain earlier, there's some pro gamers that are really good at explaining their thought process. Somebody like, for example, like Lembo comes to mind. Lembo is phenomenal when it comes to explaining exactly what he thinks about and explaining the reasoning. And then there are pro gamers out there, too, that just kind of can't quite explain why they do certain things. They just kind of do. Which is quite interesting. Either they don't want to share, which I don't think it is. Most players will be more than happy to share. They probably just don't have a good understanding as to why they do certain things, which is honestly maybe even more interesting. Now, this is a lovely attack here from ByuN. The probes will get recalled, at least a bunch of them will. But the Nexus is now gone. Yeah, okay. ByuN going for a fourth command center. The fourth Nexus is restarting here on the left side of the map. This will finish momentarily. There's the +1 air weapons already coming up for Astrea. He's thinking about going into a proper late-game Skytles army again. He knows that that is what he's gonna need. But we're not quite in a spot yet where he can really make that transition. I think if he decides to go Fleet Beacon right now and more Stargates, he's gonna get overwhelmed. ByuN is not somebody who lets his foot off the gas, but one big blunder here for ByuN is that he's very late with that armory, meaning that he's very late with his 2-2 upgrades. As Astrea is going +3/+2, ByuN still needs to start up 2-2. And that is a very significant deficit. We do have double NG Bay at least, so that's something. ByuN going armor first, there is the attack upgrade. But these are actually very late for this stage in the game. Fleet Beacon is coming up, second Stargate is coming. Astrea is apparently deciding here that he does not want to deal with that Terran late game by being pure Stalker. We have seen, for example, MaxPax be pure Stalker all the time against late game Terrans, and he seems to be able to make it work, but maybe this is a new patch thing? What's going on over here? Anyways, maybe it's a new patch thing, or he is just keen to go ahead and give it a shot. Because he is very vulnerable at this point in time. Like, this is one of those transitions you make where it's going to be great in 2 minutes, but right now, Yeah, you have to do what ByuN was doing in the previous game. You have to pretend that your army is huge. Couple of storms here. We have some flanking units set up too. Tempests are coming. Big Zealot warp in. If you can get those Zealots on the other side of the map, for example, to slow down the attack, that would be phenomenal. But the fleet beacon's expensive, and it takes a while before it really gets value. So far, so good, though, by Astrea. Storm? Oh, big feedbacks instead. Okay. That was some really fast feedbacks as well. Astrea trying to sneak out another expansion all the way in the top section of the map. ByuN is looking at this army movement and he's pretending that he doesn't know. Now he shows up though, and he gets not only just the Nexus here it seems, but also a big Zealot warp in. Astrea runs on over in that direction, but no way he's gonna save that. Okay. In the meantime, 5th command center about halfway done. Command center number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11. We have about a dozen command centers here in total. If we give ByuN another minute. ByuN wants more, by the way, setting up to play the big macro game. Tempest number 1 is gonna have to fly away. Oh, where are we going, ByuN? Apparently we're just hunting probes now. A little bit ambitious. Good storm over here on some of those units. I wouldn't want to be a Marine in ByuN's army. But ByuN is saying, yo, just kill the probes, get whatever value you can get, and let them come to our side of the map. Technically a little risky, though, when you're just building up this much infrastructure, right? So he's going 3-3. He's going into the +2. This is giving Astrea a chance to get back into the game, if I'm being honest with you. At the very least, it's going to give him a bunch of time to, for example, get the big units out. That's exactly what he does. Dude, I gotta say, I really like seeing the Mothership in basically any game now. Like, any game that goes past, like, the 15-minute mark, the odds of there being a Mothership, it's like 80%. It's really good. Against Zerg, it's about 100% now. After 14 years of Mothership neglect, Protoss players finally decided to call their mums. Ah. Mama! There she... Oh, no. I thought we were chronoing it out, but it's not... Yeah, there we go. Now we're chronoing it, too. You know the only thing I dislike about the Mothership? It doesn't have nearly the same clickbait potential on YouTube as any of the other big units. For some reason, any video that I upload that has a Mothership as a thumbnail, nobody clicks it. Everybody wants to, well, not nobody, but it gets not nearly as many clicks as like a battle cruiser or even an Ultralisk. I think the Mothership has been denied its glory for too long, where people now see it and they're like, eh. Some really lovely storms here, though. Whew. So this is a very similar game as the previous one, except we have the roles reversed. Now it's ByuN who's out-expending his opponent, who has all of the economy, and this is looking like it's ByuN's games to lose, right? ByuN's game to lose, rather. This is still a very winnable game for Astrea. He's got the army, he's got the units, he's got the economy. But now it's ByuN trying to create a choke on his opponent here. This is still very easy, though, to let slip through your fingers. There's a ton of splash damage in this Protoss army. Because of that, when you're playing, well, Marine Marauder, you can very easily lose the game if you're not paying attention. Astrea right now just fishing for whatever you can get. Good storms. Oh. Disruptor coming in up north! And that's what I'm talking about, man. Those Novas are big. Good stasis ward as well. Yeah. I like this play here from Astrea a lot. He was making it look like he was overextended. But in reality, he's like, no, please. Join my side of the map. I've got more Templar waiting on the top of the high ground. I've got a stasis ward down here as well. There's a lot of situations that look identical like that, where Protoss is just simply overextended. Not the case in this match. You know what? ByuN is actually making a lot of command centers, to the point where I'm wondering if it's too many. Like, he's now got 10 command centers. That is an awful lot of money in things that, well, aren't army units. It's probably fine, but it also means he doesn't really have the opportunity right now to quickly remax. So he's currently maxed out, but he doesn't really have any money in the bank. It's going to take a couple minutes before those CCs really kick in. And that is a big vulnerability. Astrea adding on our round, another round of gateways. Vikings actually not really controlled here at all. Yeah, he's very busy trying to micro the rest of his army, and he does get good value there, but looks to me like overall Astrea has won that engagement. Okay. This is looking like a really vulnerable base, though. Like, somehow Astrea has vision everywhere except for this base. Can we, like, look at the minimap? We should probably send a couple of zealots down there. He finds the base in the far bottom left. And now I guess with his army movement, he can probably determine that this expansion has been taken now. Dark Shrine coming up. This is, by the way, what ByuN is mostly using those orbitals for, right? He's just trying to scan as much as he can. He doesn't like the Fog of War very much, so he's trying to disable it. Ooh, okay. Where's Mama, by the way? Okay, Mama is a recall point. Much like Mom in real life too, man. Sometimes, usually on Sundays, I also recall to my mom in real life. Yeah. Does take a little bit longer. I have to drive there, but... Oh, Mom doesn't like getting scanned. It means, though, that Astrea can very quickly maneuver around the map. And what was previously looking like a really easy game for ByuN has turned into a lovely situation for Astrea. I mean, not easy, but he certainly was far ahead. +3 air weapons, though, coming up for ByuN. You can suddenly see those command centers kicking in as well, right, as far as his resources in the bank go. He has been scanning pretty much non-stop, but he still has energy to spare on some mules as well. Trying to see if he can hunt this entire Protoss army down. Right now, it's mostly gateway units, not nearly as high a quality as the army that we saw in the previous game. Marines and Marauders will do just fine against this sort of thing. Some nice EMPs as well to soften up a lot of those units. There's the cloaking field activated with the Vikings on the ground. The Mothership is actually having a grand old time. 17 probes have gone down, and it looks like Astrea will be able to win this fight. Woo! Dude, I'm loving these late-game engagements. Really nice. I get excited every time a Mothership now joins the battlefield. Resources lost-wise, this is actually surprisingly even. 69 zealots have died. Pretty nice. We're gonna actually add on some more barracks. So usually Terrans like to sit around at 8 wrecks. This is one of those games where ByuN is thinking, yo, I need to make sure I can remax real quick. He's gonna go up to 11. 23 Ghosts and 47 Vikings, by the way. 13 Templar. I feel like 47 Vikings is quite extreme. At this point, he's researching +3 air weapons, but he has no flying unit that can benefit from it, although new Vikings are popping out of the production structures right now. Oh. Never say die. Astrea. He's taken another base. ByuN cannot quite see it with the sensor tower, but he has already had vision of that section of the map. It looks like these two are becoming neighbors in the top right-hand corner. Mothership once again. Time warp, though, coming in clutch. Keep in mind that the time warp cooldown is quite long. How many Templar are there in the mix? There's one Templar coming from down south. Well, up north instead. I think Astrea doesn't have enough Templar. He's making additional Zealots, but he needs a couple more Storms in this mix. Let's see. Vikings trying to target down all of these big units. Zealots coming in clutch as well. Stalkers blink allowing the Archons and the Immortals to get within the engagement as well. ByuN doing a phenomenal job backing up. He's got enough medevacs up in the air to basically heal all of his units continuously. And this is where the game is ultimately won. It's ByuN who wins game number 2. Ley Lines is going to be the 3rd game in this best of 5 series. This is looking like the most competitive series of TVP on the new patch that I've seen so far. I'm really liking what both players are doing. Yeah, Astrea fell quite far behind early on in the previous game. But then he managed to cut some corners and he actually dragged himself back into a nice macro match. ByuN was ahead, don't get it wrong, he was ahead ever since the beginning. But that was still very difficult right there for the Terran player. It seems like overall in the games that I've seen on the new patch, TVP is just more of a competitive matchup. It seems a little bit less flimsy in the early game. We'll have to see if it actually turns out to be, but overall it seems like Protoss is off a little bit better. Which is really nice. Curious to see how all of this will play out. I know there will never not be a talk in StarCraft. Like, the moment nobody is talking anymore about balance, that's the moment the game is dead. There will never not be talk about balance. We will never know if the game is perfectly balanced, but I do feel like overall this patch is a really good step in the right direction. Honestly, my main concern at this point is Zerg. Maybe I'm slightly biased, because I've played mostly Zerg myself in all these years. I do feel like overall Zerg is being nerfed quite heavily. No, we're gonna recall a probe. Fair enough. See? I don't want to be a Marine in ByuN's army, but I would like to be a probe in Astrea. Yeah. It does seem like in the games though that I've seen on the new patch so far, Zerg is just struggling pretty hard. But then again, we haven't really seen the top Zergs compete that much. I do have some Raynor replays as well now that I can go ahead and cast tomorrow. I've been sent the replays, but they specifically requested that I don't cast them until tomorrow. Some Raynor versus mech specs, so that should give us a nice little overview. It's always difficult though to really judge where the game is at, right? Because we're being spoiled a little bit. We've seen quite a few games from the very best Protosses in the world. Like Hero is playing a bunch, mech specs is playing a bunch, and you could say the same things for Terran, right? There's a ton of ByuN replays out there. There's a lot of Clem games. Oliveira has been playing the new patch. Everybody's been playing the new patch. But then for Zerg, for the highest ranked Zergs on the planet, yeah, we've seen some Dark games. We've seen Shin games a ton as well. But not really that many Raynor games and absolutely no Serral games. So it's really hard to judge how these sort of things go. What did he just cancel? He canceled something. The Reaper Scout came in. Oh, I thought he's... Okay. I thought for a second he canceled something. Ah, I did hear correctly. Okay. I thought for a second he canceled something that the Reaper had spotted. I decided to just add on the extra gateway here instead. Okay, we're gonna go for a proxy pylon all the way up north. We're mixing it up, so that's where that extra pylon is gonna go instead. I still love this interaction, man. Like, I think this interaction over here, the one that you just now saw, is the biggest change in the new patch. It sounds so silly, but the Sentry has been a neglected unit ever since, like, 2011. I don't think it's really ever received any buff. Okay, it did get a couple of buffs. Like, the hallucination spell is 75 energy rather than 100. It also deals more damage in Protoss versus Protoss. What else? There's a couple of small adjustments to the unit across the board, but this is really not... Like, look, Astrea can use that energy ability to spawn additional hallucinated phoenixes. So now he can zone against that medevac drop while also scouting the opponent. This doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it's absolutely massive. You can see exactly what the follow-up is going to be and whether or not this proxy gate is actually worth it. Now, ByuN almost accidentally stumbled upon this. Oh, yeah. Both of them somehow managed to pass each other by. Let's see. Blink up towards the high ground. Stimpack is gonna get denied. There we go. This is a 4-gate, by the way, for Astrea. But here's the Widowmine drop going in clutch. And this is gonna hurt quite a bit because he really wants to focus on microing on that side of the map. This is going to slow down the economy a ton. Same for that Raven. Now, MaxBax can micro his way out of this. Yeah. Oh. As soon as he looked away, he loses 8 probes. This is one of those situations where you look at MaxBax handle these sort of situations instead, and you're like, oh, the man might actually be a robot. 10 probes go down just like that. And that honestly immediately, yeah, that kind of denies anything now. What are you going to do? Good work, of course, by ByuN. He knew exactly where to poke his opponent where it hurts the most. Third Nexus is done at this point for Astrea. We'll have to see when ByuN goes across the map, but I'm assuming it's going to have to wait until the holy trinity of Terran upgrades is done. We should go combat shields as well. For the Stimpack, for the +1, for the combat shields. Amen. Yeah, ByuN is going to sit back here for a little while longer. And he will be able to build a really nice army. This is one of those tricky situations, right? So Astrea knows what's going to be happening next. He knows the attack he's going to have to deal with. He decides to go charge, which is an important upgrade. Obviously, this is by no means the end of the world here for Astrea, right? He managed to deny that Stimpack upgrade the first time around. So he knows that upgrade is going to be super duper late. So at least he will be able to get, well, for example, charge done, and he will be fine with all of those upgrades. But this follow-up attack from ByuN is still likely to hit very hard. Third command center only just now fired up here for ByuN. The upgrades are finishing. Barracks number 4 and 5 are here. Army-wise, there we go. And then all of those upgrades are basically benefiting all of those units. Like, there's no unit that benefits more from combat shields than the siege tank. Yeah, incredible. Fourth Nexus starts up right now. Astrea is feeling pretty comfortable. I mean, this is what Astrea did in the previous game too, though, right? Like, he cut a couple corners. He decided to play it relatively risky, and it worked out great for him in the end. Stalkers are here to try and slow this down. Stimpack gets activated. Any stim right now is quite costly. If you do send your entire army across the map right now as Terran, though, it can be quite tricky to actually take the third command center down towards the low ground. There's one Stalker patrolling back and forth. Okay. Oh, a couple Zealots here in the back as well. Widowmine gets passed by over here. Another Widowmine over there, not really dealing that much damage. Good pushback. Lovely pushback actually here by Astrea. Great movement. And he keeps that the fourth Nexus alive with ease. Now 1-1 is finishing too. This is one of those situations where there hasn't even really been that much fighting. Yeah, now with 1-1 done, apparently Astrea is feeling brave enough to blink after this. Now that may have been a little overly ambitious because reinforcing Terran units also did show up. Ooh, that was really good for Astrea until it wasn't. Second NG bait together with an armory. We did not yet fire up the +1. Oh, no, we did. Okay, I was going to say, we didn't yet fire that one up, but apparently we did go for the +1 infantry armor too. Robo facility on the back it is. Astrea basically now just sitting on a bunch of Stalkers and Zealots, though. Which can work out quite nicely. But against a big ball of Marine Marauder Medevac, it's really hard to make work. He's going to try and sandwich this Terran army and see if he can get the job done. I love the Widow Mines, though. Those Widow Mines are really painful. Those Zealots are likely going to be taken out of the equation very rapidly. Good stutter stepping so far, but we do have a force field, making that a little bit more difficult. Stimpack gets reactivated. Yeah, I think ByuN's reinforcements are going to be able to deal even more damage. With the 4th Nexus falling, it's likely going to be the end of the game for Astrea. So he needs to hold on to the best of his abilities, but the Marines and the Marauders are looking really strong. Keep in mind that ByuN is by no means all in here. That's the 4th Nexus going down. Yeah, ByuN is by no means all in. He did delay 2-2 in favor of additional units for now. Nexus starts up as the Terran army is still here. Okay. ByuN's like, oh, he didn't leave. Okay, I guess we go 2-2. I would have loved to see a couple of Zealots. A couple Zealots here to try and deny this. Because 3-base versus 3-base is not going to work out favorably for Protoss. He does have good upgrades, though. Oh, no council. 400 minerals down the drain for Astrea. And that is not the type of stuff he can really afford right now. He also doesn't have any Colossi on the horizon. He's got decent upgrades. He can be the gateway man, but with the gateway strategy, you do need about 80 workers worth of income. GG gets cold. It's ByuN who wins the 3rd game in this series. The good old Widow Mine drop hits again. Astrea ready to go for a 4-gate all-in. Started off very nicely with that Stimpack snipe. And then he took a bunch of damage to the face, and he slowly fizzled out over time. They have nerfed Widow Mine drop time and time again, it seems. Well, maybe not time and time again, but the Widow Mine drop is not as strong as it once used to be. But when you are not prepared, when you're not paying attention, you take that many probes worth of damage, it is extremely hard to win. And even though usually Protoss doesn't lose the game immediately, it's the beginning of the end, right? Like, there is a way back into the game, and it is possible, for sure, but it is certainly one of those significant deficits. Oh, really, Astrea? Wow. So we find ourselves on Snowpiercer, and it looks like Astrea is proxying his opponent's natural expansion. Now, this is a brave play. We're going for a proxy pylon right over here. Is this double gate? Yeah, it has to be double gate. Okay. So we're going double gate at the very beginning of the match. We should see a Cybercore as well at home as soon as this first gateway finishes up. And he is ready to just start piling on the pressure. ByuN has, of course, been quite greedy in the early game. Cybercore, hello. He has been quite greedy in the early game by never scouting. Now, sadly here for Astrea, and he sees this right now, this is a double gas start for ByuN. So that means he'll be more than happy, ByuN that is, to go into a quick factory right over here on the high ground, and that's exactly what he does. So even though he doesn't know what he's playing against, ByuN is not going for a super fast low ground expansion. This will still be quite a commitment though here for Astrea, so this Cybercore being a couple seconds late actually does kind of suck. That negates any of those Stalker buffs. Yeah, finally it finishes. ByuN, okay. Does not see this coming in. Dude, the map maker definitely put this here on purpose. This is specifically for proxy gates. Any future game from ByuN, there's a very good chance he's gonna check that with the Reaver. It's very little additional effort, but the maps are new enough where this sort of stuff can catch you off guard. This is by no means an all-in, by the way, here from Astrea. He's expanding behind all of this. But it is certainly something that needs to deal some sort of damage. Widow Mine as the very first unit. Terran can't just go into a Cyclone here anymore either. It requires a tech lab again. Ooh, yeah, I don't know, man. Walking into the base seems a little dangerous. Widow Mine decides to burrow right over there. And that is the main ramp protected very nicely. Is that probe still around? I think the probe went back home. The probe would be the prime bait. Instead, you're gonna be the bait? I mean, we could use the shade ability to try and get the detonation, but I don't think ByuN is gonna allow that. ByuN would just unburrow. He's gonna try. Yeah. He does get a good bit of damage done, though. Only 3 HP remains right now on that mine. Yeah. Nah, it's not gonna do that much. But at least Warp Gates is finishing up, and this is making the game a lot more complex. The Shaded Adept is also providing high ground vision right here for Astrea. There's the siege tank out, though. Starport on the back of this. We do have a command center too, by the way, from ByuN, which is lovely. And this is the first time that Astrea sees that indeed there is a siege tank on that high ground. Loses one of the stalkers. And this one little Widow Mine, man, I feel like it needs to be repaired. It deserves it. It's been keeping basically this entire Protoss army at bay, single-handedly. It's bought a ton of time. It deserves a little bit of a repair. Yeah. Oh. Okay, never mind. Well, now he realizes where all of those units came from. And that gateway is going to be toast. Dark Shrine on the back of this. Okay, Astrea is just ready to play it down and dirty here. Ready to put it all on the line while being 2-1 behind in a best-of-5 series. Widowmine burrows once more. Okay. Stalker goes down. Widowmine does fall. ByuN not even going for a bunker, though. He's feeling pretty confident. The only thing that ByuN doesn't have is mobile detection. But he does have a tech lab on that starport. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes Banshee. Oh, he goes Raven. Okay. Yeah, he actually canceled the Banshee and goes Raven instead. We now have Blink on the back of this. Raven is a mobile detector. It is certainly the right call here. Still, though, it is also one of those situations where as a Terran player, you're like, oh, thank God, I've defended everything. But then if you look at the worker count, this is actually a very playable situation for Astrea, at least as far as income goes. There's the third Nexus coming up. He is trying to see if he can transition this towards a macro game right now. Using those Stalkers here at the front to keep the Terran player occupied. We have one Banshee, though, with Cloak, ready to deal a ton of damage. And at this point, there is no detection here for the Protoss player whatsoever. He goes for a shield battery, but this one Banshee may just be able to win the game. Yeah, it was supposed to be the Invisible Men. Oh, it was supposed to be the Invisible Men that were gonna win the game for Astrea. But instead, it's one invisible pilot that wins the series for ByuN.